Hey guys, I had to come down to my local hardware store and look for some buckets so I can put salt water in. I don't have an RODI system, so I buy the pre-mixed salt water from my local fish store. So I'm looking for 5-gallon buckets, and I also need to find lids for them because I don't want to have the water spill out. So I found these 5-gallon buckets. On the sides it says they're food safe, so they should be fine to put salt water in, to put in my aquarium. So I take 4 of these so I can have 20 gallons of water. I also found some lids that have rubber seals on them, and the center actually unscrews. So you just can undo the center of it, fill it up with water, then close them. And when you're transporting them, you don't have to worry about water spilling in your car. I also found a 2-gallon refillable beverage dispenser, which would be good for an auto top-off when I get one. So I got one of those too. So I got my 20 gallons of salt water, my 20 pounds of live sand, and then I got a sorted amount of dry rock, some of it that I have, some of it that I bought. I went dry, that way I don't have to worry about getting any unwanted hitchhikers. And I got a little rubber pile too, and that rubble pile will be for something later that you guys will see in the video. So let's get to it, get down with some aquascaping. So when I do aquascaping, I always do a dry run, no water. I just take the rock and I set them up. I don't put any sand in it yet. I like to put the base rock first and then put the sand around it. That way if I get any fish or any shrimp that like to burrow, they don't dig out all the sand from under the rock and then have the structure collapse on them. So I usually start with 3 or 4 pieces, smaller pieces, create a base, and then I could put a bigger piece on top of that. It's also good to do everything dry, that way you can fit everything. Make sure you got enough room to get your cleaners, your glass cleaners around the rocks. Because if you can't get a cleaner in between the glass and the rocks, then you get a lot of algae build up there, and you'll never be able to clean the glass. I did get some live branch rock. I got the branches because I want to accentuate the drop-off. What's the point of getting a drop-off tank if you're not going to display the main feature of it? So I'm finding different ways to fit this rock. The branch is hard. Trying to get the branches is kind of hard to stay, especially if I'm not using the glue. I could have used glue, but I didn't have any. So I'm trying to use the weight of the rock to hold the branches in place. Something you want to consider when aquascaping any nano tank is usually rule of thumb is you want 1 pound of rock, live rock, for every gallon of water, and 1 pound of sand for every gallon of water. Now with the nano tank, I don't think that applies too well because you start off with 20 gallons of volume. So by adding sand, you're taking away from the possible volume of water you can have in the aquarium. Same thing with the rock. As you add more rock, you have less volume in the aquarium that you can have water. So if you start off with a 20-gallon tank, if you put in 20 pounds of live sand and then 20 pounds of rock, yeah, you're going to have good biological filtration, but you just reduced the volume of water that you can have in your aquarium. The less volume of water you have in your aquarium, the easier it is for your salinity to rise when the water evaporates, and for your parameters to go off really quick. You won't have that buffer room because there's not enough water in your aquarium. So you gotta kind of find a middle ground between how much rock, how much sand am I gonna have, to how much water. You want to have a good amount of sand and live rock for your biological filtration, but at the same time you don't want to have too much that you don't have any room for your corals that you plan to add later if you're going to add corals. You need space for your fish to swim, and you need to have a decent amount of water. I mean, you could have less water, but then you got to get your auto top-off system. You got to check your parameters a lot more often, because with less water, you can easily get those swings. So you want to take that into consideration. Also, when aquascaping, you want to plan out how you want the tank to look a year from now, 2 years from now. Maybe right now you're interested in like Acropora, SPSs, so you can aquascape according to what kind of corals you want to have. If you like Pythoa and if you like acans, aquascape to how you want those to look in your aquarium. And you got to plan for the growth of them. So you don't want to clutter up one space and then eventually your corals are growing too big that there's not enough room for them where you put them. You can change stuff around, but the more you have your hand in the tank, the more you affect the habitat that you're creating. So if you plan ahead, figure out, okay, this is how I want my tank to look like a year from now. You plan ahead for the corals that you're going to put in it, and you plan ahead for their growth. Then you save yourself a lot of trouble down the road. Same thing if you plan with what kind of fish you're going to have. If you have fish that like to burrow, if you like fish that like to swim between things, or if you like fish that like to perch. So I plan on having a couple fish that like to perch, like to sit and just look. So that's why those branches are in that I'm putting in there also, because I know I'm planning ahead. Also with this drop-off system, I'm planning on having a mixed reef, but really the top part is going to be specifically just SPS. And then on the drop-off, I plan on put some nice mushrooms, some polys, maybe some acans, different stuff. So I'm going to have a higher water flow near the top, lower flow near the bottom. So as I'm aquascaping, I'm taking into consideration what kind of corals I plan on having in my tank. I'm going to start putting the sand in the aquarium. I had to get a 20-pound bag because this black style sand that I'm going to put in here only came in the 20-pound. That's what they had. But I'm not going to use a full 20 pounds of sand in this aquarium. Especially the way it's set up, it's not very favorable to put a deep sand bed. In other tanks I do have deep sand beds, but in this one it doesn't have a rim that covers up the sand. So all the sand you put in is exposed. So I decided just to go with a decent amount of sand, get it all around, cover it all up. I'm also using a cup. It's going to be easier for me to just dump it in with a cup, and then I'll use my hand to spread it out, get it in between the rocks, and in between everything. And it also helped not to scratch the acrylic. Again, I've never had an acrylic tank, so I'm trying to be on the safe side. It's going to take me a little longer, but I'm saving myself some mess that I could be making, scratching the acrylic, stuff like that. And I'll just fill the sand all the way around the rocks and then spread it. I'm creating a rubble pile right in this corner. Rubble piles are great if you want to have your copepods and your rotifers and stuff like that. It's a good place for them to live, where they can populate. I'm going to eventually try to keep a mandarin in this tank. So I'm trying to create plenty of places for these copepods to be able to live and house and reproduce. That way the mandarin will have a good amount of food. Usually you don't want to keep a mandarin in anything smaller than a 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be buying copepods, putting them in here, and then maybe a year or so down the road, I'll get the mandarin when there's a really good copepod population. I also plan on adding a refugium in the back of the tank, and that should help with that too. But if I go ahead and get the row pile started now, I can get copepods in there, they can start populating, and it'll give the mandarin some food that he can have down the road. I stack it up. I was going to go all the way to the top, but then it would seem really cluttered. So I'm only going about halfway up. Just get a decent amount of rocks in there, piling them up, making them look nice. I'm not going the full width of the tank, because again, I got to be able to fit my scrubber down the glass, and I don't want to have rocks obstructing when I'm trying to clean the glass of the tank. Now some people may comment, you can't put a mandarin in a 20-gallon tank, he'll die. They don't move a lot. The thing is, they're always eating, so you need a really big copepod population. So I will supplement the copepods that are in the tank with buying more and introducing them into the tank. Here it is, guys, all done. I really like the way it turned out. I like the way the branches hang over the drop-off. Those areas in between the rock that my invertebrates can get into, shrimp and whatnot. I got one big rock right in the middle. I'll figure out what I do there, but I like the way it looks. Here's a view from all the angles. I'm happy with it. There's still some space in the back. Maybe I'll put a little frag rack against the back of the tank there. But let's get this system wet. There it is, guys. Got all my salt water in there. I actually had about 8 gallons left over of the 20. So there's probably like a 12 gallons of water in here. I'm throwing this Nano powerhead in here. I'll talk about it a little bit later in the videos. But to help with the water flow, I'm having it point towards the top of the tank because I am going to have those SPS up there. I don't want to aggravate too much the bottom because I have mushrooms and stuff like that that don't like a lot of flow. So I threw that power head on there, and I think that'll really help, especially since the pump on the aquarium only cycles 211 gallons per minute. So here's a final video of how the tank looks with the light that I put on it. Check it out. Here it is, guys, finished product. It's a little cloudy. That's going to happen. Eventually it'll clear up. Subscribe if you want to see the next video. I'll have an update coming up on the tank. Thanks for watching.